Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. It's now week 5 of Doubles Derby. It's the last week of the regular season. So I'm here to give the predictions as usual. Apologies for not uploading last week. Kind of just a busy week IRL, so I didn't really get a whole lot done Mons-wise. But yeah, we're in the last week. It's a very interesting week. We'll get into it in more detail, but every team has a chance to both make playoffs and not make playoffs. So there's a lot of possibilities for how this could go. But yeah, it's a very interesting situation, like, that you only kind of get when you have, like, 6 teams like this, you know? Like, all these teams are, like, really competitive. So it's been a really good, interesting season. And we'll see how it ends up. For now, it's just me on the call. Ninja is also here, but I don't think she will be saying anything, except maybe about ADB. But yeah, so courtesy of Z, we have the playoff scenarios. Shout out Z, excellent post. So the 2 teams that are in the best position are Spatial Week and Ice Fighters. Both of them have two wins, a loss, and a tie. This is pretty good, all things considered. Spatial Week are in a slightly better position because they have a higher differential. Ice Fighters are also doing okay, but a little bit farther behind. So, Spatial Week, they win or tie, they're in. Same thing with Ice Fighters. Spatial Week has slightly better. Well, I guess they have the same, but it's just easier for Spatial Week because they have a better differential because of this week. Their 2 wins that were 6-2 as opposed to 5-3. So, if the Spatial Week lose, they qualify. With the Tachyte Cutters losing, while Spatial maintain a higher differential than Turbo Blaze. Okay, yeah, but you can read it in more detail. But basically, these 2 teams win or tie, they're in, and they lose, they have to get better differential than the teams that are in, like, 3rd and 4th or whatever. It's a little too complicated to read out because all the teams have possibilities to overtake in this tour. And then the other 2 teams that are tied for 3rd, they win, they're in. They tie, they need differential stuff, basically. And if they lose, they still have odds, but, like, not really as good. Wait, am I getting something mixed up? Oh yeah. If they lose, they just need really good differential stuff to go on. And the last 2 teams basically just need to win, or else they need, like, ridiculous situations to happen, basically. And even if they win, they're not guaranteed in, so it's kind of dire for these last 2 teams, but they're definitely still in it, and that's part of what makes this last week really interesting, because obviously, you know, we don't have that many teams, so they're all, like, playing each other, right? So yeah, let's just get started with Ice Riders and Red Spec Redemption. So, reminder, Ice Riders, really good shape. Red Spec Redemption must win for them, basically. Anything else other than a win, they're kind of cooked. Bar, like, a miracle. So, let's see, how do I want to approach this? Yeah, we'll just start off with SP. So in SP, we have Staraptor versus Mike, and then Paint versus Terrakutai. This is a bit of an unfortunate pairing. Well, Mike was really good in the first couple weeks, but kind of, like, struggled the last few weeks. Staraptor's 3-1 has had a really good season. This is close. This is, like, 2 players that are, like, primarily VGC players. Kind of, like, I'd say in relatively similar positions in DOU in terms of, like, experience and stuff. So I'd probably give it to Staraptor. Staraptor has a little bit more DOU experience, and is doing slightly better in this tour. A little bit more confident on, like, the brings here. Well, it's really close. I don't really want to predict against Mike because obviously he's my friend, but Staraptor is a tough pull here for Mike, I think. Yellow Paint versus Terrakusai. I think this is a bold for Terry. Terry's had a good year. Paint has struggled a little bit, to my knowledge. Let me double check the records. Let's see. Yeah, Paint is 0-2, and I think Red Spec. Yeah, Terrakusai is 2-2. That's not bad. So I will give the edge to Syracuse here. It's close. All right, Burns versus Nails. This is a crazy game, by the way. Like, um, Nails has definitely looked better in this tour, though. I think it goes to Nails. Um, although both these players have a lot of respect for each other, so like really like Nails having a good record in this tour and Burns having less of a good record doesn't really matter that much, in my opinion. It's like a very close game. Um, I will give the edge to Nails, but I think this is definitely a game to watch. This is a lot hinges on this game, and this is one of the best matchups of the entire tour. These are two, like, I think the two most expensive players here. All right, Kunal versus Schuster. Both these players have kind of had rough tours. Kunal's only played 2 weeks, has gone 0-2, and Schuster's played all 4, gone 1-3. That said, Schuster did get a win last week. This is a hilarious game, I think. I can't even put into words just how funny this matchup is and the context here. Uh, predicting one would just be a disservice to the other. I, I'm gonna flip a coin. I think these two players have an equal amount of disrespect for each other. I just don't really have a way to do it. All right, so heads is gonna be Kunal and tails is gonna be Schuster. All right, tails. Okay, unfortunate for Kunal. Um, but yeah, this is another really good game. This Natdex games are really good. I encourage everyone to pay attention to these two. These are, even if the records don't show it, these are 4 of the most formidable players in the pool, in my opinion. Um, Schuster's record in ND is not bad. He's just 1-1. He was just struggling in SB early on. Kunal just hasn't played, so this is a sleeper pick for a good matchup here. All right, Monterey versus Vespi. So Monterey was struggling early on, or was doing really well early on, but it's kind of struggled the last couple of weeks. Vespi has kind of bounced around. He played DPP last week. I believe he's also 2-2. I'm a little bit more confident in Vespi's building, to be honest. In play-wise, I'd say they're probably pretty equal. Monterey has definitely had better results recently, but he also just plays a lot more than Vespi does. Um, damn, all of these are really good games for the most part. I'm not sure. I'll go advantage. I'll go advantage Vespi. I think. Um, especially with like, I think in okay. So for context, do you just ban Baskef, which is a pretty major thing for the tier. I think Vespi probably has like a little bit better building instincts. I would trust him to adapt a little bit better. But Madara is like really good in this tier. If he could bounce back this week, I think he could definitely like start putting up some really good records in this tier, entering playoffs. Another good game. All 3 of these games again, really good. PLC, Nakis just popped in last week. Got a win over the then undefeated player Sypha. Red Zone, what's Red Zone's record? Let's see. Red Zone is 1-2. Okay, I'll probably give it to Nakis. That was a really impressive one. I always rated Sypha really high in this pool. Um, and I think like getting that win is really instills a lot of confidence in this player who I'm less familiar in, to be honest. They're relatively new, I think, or I just haven't seen them play that much. Red Zone's like pretty competent at DLC, but I think he's had like less impressive wins in this tier. I don't know. It's kind of hard. He's only played 2 games in this tour in DLC. I think that kind of the struggle for Ice Fighters, they don't really have like one of the DLC mainers. And neither do Red Spect either, so it's kind of an interesting matchup here in that regard. Um, yeah, I'll give it to Nakis. I think they've got it. Redstone has shown good competence in this tier, though. I just really don't know what to go here. All right, Kegged versus Z. This is Z all the way. Z is one of the best mines at DPP, and Kegged is relatively new. It'd be kind of crazy of me to predict anything other than Z here. All right, C versus Yoda. Yoda's had a really good tour, to be honest. I think he's 3-1. Yeah, he's the best player on the team. C is also one of the better ADV players. Both 3-1. This is a good matchup in ADV. I'll give it to Yoda. I really like Yoda's play. I think like C having more experience in ADV is less important than like maybe I thought it was in the early weeks of this tour, because I didn't realize that this was like the first tour of ADV post boom. I think the two players are on relatively equal footing after like putting up good records in the earlier season. I'll go Toyota. I think I just predicted Red Spec 5-3 or 6-2. That's definitely a disservice. I don't know. The matchups just on paper are not as positive for Ice Riders as like you maybe think they are. They can definitely swing both ways, right? This game, I literally coin flipped this game here, and then Burns versus Nails is just like also kind of a coin flip too. Yeah, I'll stand by it. I think there's just like a lot of really even matchups in this tier, and going with my gut, that's just kind of what I get. And I think Red Spectre can be really motivated. This week they really need to clutch up here. And I do like this lineup from them. I think it's probably the best one they've put in so far. This is a tour, like I said previously, with a lot of like lineup fluctuation. So finding out your best lineup is pretty good. And a lot of the teams here have like done that. Yeah, I don't know. It's probably this is a tough one to predict. I wouldn't be surprised if I got the majority of these wrong, to be honest. All right, Spatial Week versus my team. Oh, never mind. I'm not going to predict this. But overview matchups, we got me versus Seraphs. Seraphs, I think, just got subbed in like a few weeks ago. Let's see. Yeah, 2-1 right now. That's really good. Good on them. Got a win over Rat Packer. Wow. Then Charlotte has also done really well. Charlotte versus Gmod. Gmod is moving up from ADV. That's an interesting adjustment. We'll see how that works out. Akaru versus Eat Foods. Akaru, the Spatial Week Natics has done really well. And God's Natics has done pretty good. Slightly better than average, but definitely like full roll Natics core. It'll be interesting to see how they match up into our stuff and our players. All right, DOU Act versus Nito. This is a really good matchup in DOU. Act is one of the best DOU players, and Nito is as well. Act is 3-1, yeah. This is a good matchup. Really good matchup. Cotton versus Asawa. Cotton has put up good records as well, to be honest. Or it's a 1-1. I thought I read earlier they were 2-0. Oops. But yeah. DLC. Pretty interesting matchup. Two players we don't really see in these tours. And both are doing pretty well right now. And then DPP Dad 1 versus Jello. Kind of just a match between two manners. This will be pretty interesting for people into DPP. Then Amrap versus Big Pichu. With Gods making another lineup change, moving Gma out of ADV. And then Amrap having played ADV the whole tour. Alright. Now on to the last game. Tackdown Cutters versus Turbo Blaze. Tackdown Cutters looked pretty weak in the first couple weeks of the season, but they've bounced back pretty well. I believe they've won their last 2 weeks. Yes, they have. So they've got a lot of momentum on their side. They're up against Turbo Blaze, who have kind of really struggled since week 1. Although they finally have a good lineup again. I've been kind of roasting their lineup for like forever, but this is like their best lineup by far, in my opinion. But they really need to win here to want any chance. That being said, I do think these first like 3 matchups all look very favorable for the Turbo Blaze. ESM versus Eric. ESM, one of the best DOU players the last like 2 or 3 years. Eric has always done really well in this tour, honestly. It's pretty impressive. As someone who only plays in team tours, like that's definitely something that I've like noticed. I think he's a really formidable player. Yeah, he's 3-1. But I think ESM is like a tough mid pairing here, right? ESM is just one of the strongest DOU players, 2-0 in the tour. And it's just an uphill battle here. And then Faye versus Volcarona BGC. Faye just has a lot more experience. Has done not super great in this tour, to be honest. But I think he's 1-2. Let's see. Had a week off last week, though. Probably definitely capable of bouncing back, right? I think Faye is just a more experienced player here, and the safer pick as well. Long Ice versus Smudge. Smudge finally getting a chance to play. Long Ice struggled early in Natdex, so this is honestly a pretty close matchup. But he did bounce back with those 2 weeks in DUU. However, we'll have to see how that translates back to Natdex. However, after talking to him a fair amount the last couple of weeks, I think he's a little bit more confident after playing DUU and kind of getting back on the right footing. Yeah, interesting matchup. We'll have to see how Smudge does. We haven't seen him in this tour yet. Of course, the Natdex cheerleader and all that. I'm going to give the advantage to Long Ice, though. I think Long Ice with those 2 weeks on his side, even if it was in a different tier, is still likely to translate here. All right, XQ versus Rat Packer. Let's see. What's XQ's record? XQ is 2-2. And I believe Rat Packer is also 2-2. So this is a really good matchup in Natdex. This is just cinema. Rat Packer is 2-1 in that deck. So what about XQ? XQ is 2-0 in that deck. Okay. We'll say Rat Packer has beaten some really impressive players. I'll give the advantage to XQ. I think this is really close. But I don't know, kind of a coin flip. I'll go to XQ, though. Make it a little bit more interesting. I'm not going to pick for the same team 4 times in a row, especially when this one is so close. And XQ also like has had really good Natdex results ever since like the first NDPL. All right, Crixel versus Hiss. Hiss finally back in DUU. Took long enough, to be honest. Definitely a confident player in DPP. I would definitely not rate them as highly in DPP as in DUU, whereas in DUU I think they're like absolutely one of the best players in the pool. Frixel, let's see, how does Frixel do? Frixel is 2-2. I think Hiss has stronger DUU fundamentals and more experience. I'll give it to Hiss. Alright, Gasai versus Seifa. I gotta give it to Seifa. I know he did lose last week, but I think still is one of the strongest players in the pool, or maybe even the strongest. I expect him to bounce back. Gasai also a good player. Had a couple early losses in the tour, but did bounce back finally with a win in DLC last week. Good game between 2 players that are pretty close to DLC mains. I don't know if I'd call Gasai that, but Seifa definitely is. But I'm going to give the advantage to Seifa. I'm just really impressed with this play always. Alright, Big O versus Laptops. I've got to say, I've not really been particularly impressed with Laptops' play in this tour. 1-3, kind of just a rough showing so far. And then Big Ol started 0-2 against 2 players that were not in the tier, and then 2-0 against 2 players with experience in the tier. And Laptops is a player with experience in the tier. So clearly, I think Big Ol's going to win this game. But yeah, impressive bounce back the last couple of weeks from Big Ol. I think he'll continue it here. Alright, SMB versus Ninja. Let's see. What is SMB's record? SMB is 3-1 in ADV. Alright. I'm giving the advantage to SMB. SMB has looked really good in ADB. From the games I've seen, I just wasn't really sure on what his record actually was. Ninja has kind of struggled a little bit. I know she's pretty motivated, though. But realistically, I don't think this is the matchup the week is going to come down to. I think really, like, Hackhunt Cutters are going to need to, like, really step up their game in these 3 slots if they want to win this week. Granted, Turbo Blaze need to win. They can't even afford to tie, right? And there's, like... But I do think a lot of these upper matchups are really heavily Turbo Blaze favored. And then this Actix game is really a coin flip. It's really these 2 down here are the only ones I'm, like, particularly confident in the Hackhunt Cutter player winning. But yeah, I will predict Turbo Blaze 5-3. Okay. And then, yeah, I predicted Redemption 6-2, which is definitely incorrect. That's not going to be right. But, I don't know. It really hinges on these Nat deck slots for this series, right? Like, they're both defense. I don't really know how else to put it. Maybe in this game, if you can get value out of Red Zone and DLC, you can also get an advantage for Ice Riders. I do think Ice Riders are on paper a really strong team. But they only really have like 6 players I'm like really confident in, to be honest, or 6 slots. I'm less so confident in Paint and Red Zone. They have not looked the best in this tour, unfortunately. Whereas everyone who's subbed in for... I mean, Redemption has had some slots that are weaker too, and some slots that are less proven. But I think these 2 slots really are, in my eyes, holding back Ice Riders here. Really, like, what is Red Zone doing playing DLC, man? Like... I think the other day we were talking and he was like, yeah, I don't want to see anyone else try to like force a non-mainer into DLC because they're just going to get burnt out or something. And low-key, kind of right. I don't know if the rest of us are built for these speed ties, to be honest. Yeah. Anyway, that's predictions. I saw Jello joined earlier. Is he still here? Let's see. Yeah, he is. Anything to add, Jello?
We're gonna beat Spatial Week 7 and not qualifying. It's gonna be really funny.
True. That's actually like not possible. Pretty sure. Like if we win, we're just in.
No, they're not gonna not qualify.
Oh, true. Facts. That's gonna be my payback for predicting against Spatial Week every single week. It's time to put my money where my mouth is. Shout out to Idle for complaining every week. But yeah, that's gonna be it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you for playoffs.